LaunchLeft Podcast. We're just a podcast and we're LaunchLeft. Hi, I'm Rain Phoenix. Welcome to LaunchLeft Podcast, a space for famed creatives to launch the next wave of music rebels, an intentional space to highlight and empower all artists for whom radical creativity is not a choice but a necessity. Follow us on all socials at LaunchLeft or find us on launchleft.com. Our guest today is Lucinda Williams. I think one of the greatest living songwriters. That is my opinion. She manages to also find a way to seamlessly marry her politics and her lyrics, or her activism and her lyrics, in a way that to me isn't preachy or cheesy in any way, but instead just an elevated form of storytelling where she imbues her songs with hidden messages that make you think about the status quo and our political system. And so my hat's off to Lucinda Williams in a million and one ways. She's been a huge influence and a hero of mine. Please welcome her to the show. I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, sure. Your place looks cool.
Thanks. Yeah, it's my little artist cabin in the woods. I weirdly have one of these in Los Angeles, of all places. Your place looks really cool too. It's almost like we're yin and yang. There's a lot of
Well, that's only because we haven't, gotten stuff in yet. We have some artwork and we haven't put it up on the walls yet and stuff. It would be more like books everywhere or artwork and stuff. That's all in LA.
Right. That's right. You relocated recently to Nashville.
Yeah, we're here a lot, so we decided we got a little place here over in East Nashville and Lachlan Springs, and it's cool. It's a lot easier, just logistically, traveling and everything. And a lot of the people we work with now are here. Like my label, 30 Tigers, and they're here, and so
makes it easier.
Yeah.
Less traffic, I assume.
Less traffic, and it's easier you can be more spontaneous.
Right.
Like with getting people together and stuff, it's just like last minute kind of stuff, and it's harder to do that in LA.
You made your new record there too, in Nashville?
That was made in Nashville with Ray Kennedy at his studio, and he's the same one I worked with on the Car Wheels.
It's such a fantastic record. Thank you. Thank you for making it. Really.
It felt good. It was fun making it, and it felt good doing it, with pretty straight ahead kind of a process, really, with my band who I tour with, Butch and David and Stuart, and, working with Ray at his little studio and nobody else there. And we pretty much just, banged it out in between tours, over a period of about 2 weeks altogether, and then it also saved a lot of time because we decided not to have any overdubs really, like people come in and do harmonies and all, which I thought we were going to do. And I was thinking I wanted to on certain songs, but then, it was kind of a hard decision, but then we all decided. It was a mutual decision. We all just decided, let's just leave it like it is, and just have it be,
raw. Raw. As a matter of fact, at a certain point, I was like, wondered if you were a fan of Sonic Youth, or if you listened to Sonic Youth.
Yeah. I was a big fan of a lot of different stuff. Like the Stooges, Iggy Pop stuff, early stuff.
Great punk rock in this record.
Yeah.
It
had to come out at some point,
Really. And I was thinking too, one of the things that I always love about your songwriting is you're one of the few artists, I think, that can talk about things that really matter and activism or politics in a way that doesn't feel preachy and soapboxy or cheesy, right? Like you have the only ones that I look to and I'm like, okay, let's hear about something really hard to listen about, like some political thing, but through the lens of poetry. You do it so seamlessly.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because, a lot of people have asked me, well, why haven't I done this sooner and all of this? And that's one of the reasons is because they're hard to write, I set the bar really high at a really young age when I discovered Bob Dylan in 1965, and he was writing these amazing protest songs like Masters of War and, The Times They Are Changing and, Blowing in the Wind and just all these amazing. And I figured, well, if I'm going to do it, I've got to do it right, and it's much easier to write an unrequited love song, that's why that's mostly what you hear, from other songwriters and including myself. But I decided, I wanted, not just needed to, but I wanted to branch off into some different directions, at some point, especially after I met Tom, my soulmate, and I've realized, if I'm going to still be a songwriter or write songs, I've got to broaden the horizon a little bit, So it's a combination of it's something I've wanted to do anyway, and then, kind of learning how to do it. Because they are hard to write without sounding kind of corny or preachy or, too kumbaya-ish, like,
that's,
you know what I mean? Like everybody, brothers and sisters, hold hands and all that,
Totally. That's exactly what I meant. And that's why I was like so moved by this record, because you did that so seamlessly. And I know this was the first record that you kind of collaborated lyrically with Tom on.
Yeah. That's been a whole new thing, and it's been really great. And, that was kind of, I never thought I would be doing that necessarily. It wasn't really planned out, but Tom's always been into writing and creative writing and everything, not professionally or anything, but he's always been into it and interested in it. And it kind of started just as a kind of a little thing. It sort of, kind of tiptoed into it. I would be in my writing mode and Tom would come up and say, well, I got this idea for something, and, I've got a title and an idea and a few lines, and he would be real shy about it. And he'd say, you don't have to use it if you don't want to, but I just thought I just want to show it to you. And I was real open about it. I said, that's cool. Let me see it, So it kind of started like that. And then when I was doing the last writing thing for this album, he started showing me more. And it kind of turned into a thing. And like Man Without a Soul was his idea. And so was Big Black Train. And at first, and a couple of them I wasn't sure, and like Big Black Train, he came to me with that one. And initially I said, well, I don't know what I'm going to write about a train that hasn't been written about in, the last 150 years. I mean, what can you say about a train that hasn't been said already? And Tom said, well, I was kind of looking at this like the Big Black Train represents the black cloud of depression, and how, like, in this case, you don't want to get on the train. So it's not like the usual train songs are like Freedom Train and, I'm going to see my baby and this train's taking me to better places and all that. And so it took me a little bit to get into the concept of it. But then I started working with it and got some verses. And I think it was when I got the melody that it really kind of clicked, and now, and I don't know what it is about that song, but it makes me want to cry almost every time I sing it. And other people have said that.
Yeah.
It's kind of this weird mystical thing about that song. And it's so simple.
Yeah.
But so
it's definitely like when I listened through the record the first time, it stood out like that one was, just grabbed my heart. Yeah, it has. And then of course, the more I listen to it, like now I have countless I can't really say like, well, my favorite is that's like, they're all really, really special. And I just love that, you've been in music since the late 70s, really. Like that's when it seems like you started, and that you're always like open to changing and morphing and growing as an artist and not getting stuck. And that kind of courage to me is what, like pardon my usage of the word, legendary legacy artists, but as iconic artists. That's like that. Those words come to mind because it's like you're courageous and you're digging deeper. You care so much about like risking everything to find something deep.
See, that's another thing I'm glad you said. I was thinking about that earlier today. Before I got up, I was laying in bed thinking, everybody's talking about, this album is so angry and all of this. And yeah, it is, but it's because I care. I mean, I had there was an article in the New York Times recently that said something about, coincidentally, the title of the article was, where is the soul of Donald Trump? And it was like, oh, wow, has he heard the song, or is this just a coincidence? So we posted it on my page on Facebook, a link to the article and a link to the song, Man Without a Soul. And some of the comments that came back were not kind at all. I mean, I was shocked, actually. These were presumably fans of my music. And one of them said, the one that got me the most said that, accused me of not being compassionate, and said that, how can Lucinda write a song like this? I thought she was a compassionate person. She wrote that song, Compassion. And, but this isn't compassionate at all. And she doesn't need to be writing a song like this. And I'm just, like, what? I mean, so it got me to thinking about, next time if I get into that again, I'm just going to say, you know what? I'm one of the more compassionate people you'll ever meet in your life. And that's what this is about. That's what these songs are about. I want people to wake up and be aware and just, care, like get out of your, complacency and, that kind of thing. That it goes along with that thing of like, oh, you shouldn't be writing about this kind of stuff. You should just, shut up and sing kind of thing. And it's like you see people say this all the time, like on Facebook, like, I don't want to hear about politics anymore. I'm just going to, I just want to hear all positive, nice, light stuff, like I just can't deal with it anymore.
Do you think that this time
away from it, that's the thing.
Yeah. Do you think that COVID, this COVID-19, keeping everyone at home and basically all the constructs of the world as we know it, and what was the markers of success and the markers of everything, right? The markers of just real life are now kind of just missed, right? We're all stuck at home. None of the things that normally kept us out in the world we can do.
Yeah.
All the markets.
Right. Yeah. Right now, yeah.
Do you think that this time is it potentially a time for awakening and for people having more awareness of these constructs we've created that have made us complacent, like you said, or just wanting to only feel like soothed by society and not?
I would have thought, I would have thought that this thing that's happening right now would ultimately bring people more together and make people more aware. And, just like any other battle that we fought, it's a different kind of battle, but it's still a battle. Just like, when I was growing up, the war in Vietnam, and before that, the civil rights movement, there have always been battles. When have things not been difficult in this country? When have we not had something we had to fight for or fight against? None of that has changed. So I just look at this like this is something else that we need to come together for, and at the risk of sounding kumbaya-ish, Um, but, you know, that's what we do.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think I'm a positive person. And that's the other thing I've been asked a lot about, you know, where do I get my hope? And, you know, that's just the kind of person I am. I mean, I guess they're kind of, some people are surprised that I have these, you know, quote unquote, angry songs on this album. And then I have these other songs at the end, you know, they're kind of more about faith and hope and everything. But to me, that makes sense.
You're a complex human being.
Yeah, exactly.
All of us are, right? You don't just have one emotion.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you're angry and sometimes you're gentle and sometimes you're fun, and we're all like that, right? It's kind of,
yeah, it's a normal.
You're three-dimensional. It's okay.
It's a normal, you know, that's the thing. It's a normal, healthy emotion.
Yeah.
Which seems to scare some people, that this particular emotion. You know, people respond in weird, different ways. It's like they don't want that button pushed. You know, they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to look at it. You know, I remember a long time ago when I was in Nashville in the 90s, and there used to be a thing in the back of Tootsie's, not the front part of Tootsie's. They still have the touristy country bands there, but some of the local musicians started up a little room in the back of Tootsie's where they would have really cool music jam session type things. It was hosted by Greg Gehring, and I would go down there and sit in sometimes and stuff. And I was down there one night and got up and did a song, and then I was sitting down, and this younger guy came and sat down next to me. He said, "Would you tell me how to write songs? I want to know how you do it. You know, what do I need to know about this?" And I said, "Well, the first thing is you're going to have to be able to dig deep down within yourself and go down in there, way down in there, into the dark, scary parts, you know, and pull stuff out." And he just sat there. I'll never forget this. And he looked at me with this look on his face in all seriousness and said, "I don't think I can do that." And it broke my heart, you know, because I thought,
yeah,
sorry.
No,
you know, it's just so sad.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's how a lot of people live, and they don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can't imagine living like that, you know, and not, because that's what art is.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's where the beauty of it all comes from.
100%.
You know, and it's the most important thing in the world.
Yeah.
I think. Where would we be without it? I mean,
to the choir for sure.
We would be in a cave still. Yeah. I mean, well, now we are in a cave. I didn't realize I was making a joke, but you know, I mean, it's self-expression, and you know, that's the most important thing.
It's interesting because I was going to ask you if you felt that all good art or all art comes from adversity, or, you know, or does it come from a varied number of places, or, you know, that was a question that popped in my mind this morning. I was like, oh, I'm curious what her feelings are on that, like whether, you know, she feels it only come, you know, because some artists, like because I do find even when I write a song, often it'll be you're hurting about something and you need to just dig deep, but sometimes it just comes bubbling out and it's sent to you, you know. Those are my favorite songs, the ones that get sent to me.
I absolutely know that songs are sent, things are sent kind of through me, and I'm a vessel. I am but a vessel. But it's, you know, a lot of artists talk about this, like, do you have to suffer, you know, in order to write? The way I look at that is I think it does come from a place of suffering, but it doesn't mean you have to actively be suffering, you know, at the time you're writing. That's why that deep, dark well is so important, you know, because the way I look at it is, you know, there's a well there, and I just dip my hand in and pull something out. Like, regardless of what my life is right now,
right,
in the moment, you know, I'm happily with my soulmate. I have a nice house. these kinds of things. People oftentimes think because you have those things that you're not suffering anymore. So therefore, how are you going to create art?
Right.
You create it because you have, it's still in there.
Exactly.
Most marrying Tom, it is not going to, mean that I'm not still suffering. Right. We all suffer. Who doesn't suffer? We suffer from the moment of birth.
Exactly.
We cry as soon as we get out of the womb.
Yeah.
Welcome to the world. It's all about suffering.
Yes.
That doesn't mean you can't feel good and have happy moments and times and everything, but the whole point of it, we all have that stuff. I don't care whether you're living in a mansion or living in a ghetto or whatever extraneously is going on in your life. That shouldn't affect what's in there. That's the art. That's where the art comes in.
Yeah.
So this whole idea that you have to live in chaos in order to create is kind of a myth, I think. Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to have a good relationship. You wouldn't be able, all those things, So
yeah.
I went through that whole awareness and all of that, it was interesting and kind of amazing, actually, that when Tom and I got together and got engaged and, the word got out and I was doing press for, I think it was my album, Little Honey. And I actually was asked during some of these interviews, like, people are concerned that now you're not going to be able to write songs anymore. Because all my songs were about these, mostly about love, but, sad songs about this and that, So now that you found Tom, all that's going to go away. And I was like, really? That's so pedantic.
Yeah.
That's just so, I don't even want to have to try to explain why that's not true. Are you really that stuck in that, that unaware, not to sound elitist, sorry, but,
I don't think that
I actually had people ask me that question, like, okay, well, and I was like, want to see? Watch me,
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff with writing these kinds of songs started bubbling up. We're talking about bubbling up, after that, after people, it's like a challenge, like, okay, I'll show you, I can still be a good songwriter and have a great relationship. I'm going to show you, God damn it, like.
And you absolutely did. So, just incredible. It's interesting when you were talking, I also had the thought about, love, but also about loss, right? Like, it's almost like saying like, oh, now that the person you care deeply about has been dead for 2 years, you're over it, right? You can't speak about loss anymore. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like, it's like if you've known heartbreak, it's always part of who you are, right? Even if you fall in love, just like if you've known loss, like
exactly,
always, right?
Well, that's the thing. I still write about, I still have feelings for, other, ex-lovers and connections and all of those things, Yeah. And that's another reason I married Tom, because he passed that test of, not getting jealous and upset or whatever else, about songs about when I have written or write songs about other people, because, that it has to be like that, and that's the other thing is, it took me till I was in my 50s to find the right person who, would fit with me.
Yeah.
And that's hard to find. I always knew it was possible, though.
Sounds like you might even be twin flames. Soulmate, sure, but maybe even twin flames. Have you ever heard of that expression?
Yes, exactly.
It makes me so happy to know that you did find that kind of love. There's really nothing more powerful than
Yeah.
finding an equal and someone who respects you for who you are,
Yes.
can take all the good and the bad and help you grow, and you help them grow. Like, there's really nothing better. So what a joy to know that, whenever friends, family, people I don't know, people I do, find that makes me happy.
Yeah.
It's rare.
It is possible.
It makes it possible, right?
I had to open up my mind, though, and get rid of that sort of image of the bad boy,
right?
With the motorcycle boots and the trains on the motorcycle, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mom was working at a record company, the enemy. He was like the record company guy,
And now he's writing.
I had to get past all that. So there were a few bumps in the road.
Yeah.
But that's just part of growing and
growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, music, I always ask this question of every guest, which is just, how did music find you?
Well, probably genetically, spiritually and genetically from my mother, because she studied piano from the time she was about 4 years old and was majoring in music at LSU, Louisiana State University, when she met my dad. So, there was always a piano in the house when I was growing up, when they were still married and together. So, yeah, I think I was just born into that, And then, of course, my dad's writing and all of that. So I was very blessed to have had the genes from both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah,
to combine them both. Yeah, I guess you're saying she played piano and he wrote poetry, right? So
yeah,
it's like the marriage of those two.
Yeah, and she didn't get into it professionally or anything, but yeah, she was a music. She played piano. She was a lover of music, and she loved artists like Judy Garland and Errol Garner. And so I was exposed to that kind of music, and my dad was listening to Hank Williams and John Coltrane, Yeah.
What was the first band or music that you had that visceral experience as your own?
Wow. Well, the thing is that it all was happening at the same time, because I was a teenager in 67, 68, 69, 70. So, I've been doing a lot of these song list things for different publications and favorite albums and throughout my life and all of this. And, I was this one period of time, that period between 1966 and 1969, just those 3 years alone, bands one of them for me would have been The Doors' first album. Bob Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited, that was 65. Hendrix, the first album that came out, the Cream, Disraeli Gears, Buffalo Springfield, Led Zeppelin. I mean, all of this stuff, it was mind-blowing. Wow. And it all came out in that little pocket.
Incredible.
When I was also in my teens. So it was coming at me woo, Jefferson Airplane, Surrealistic Pillow, right. Allman Brothers. I mean, it was just, yeah.
Rich.
So, yeah, very rich and very, multi, Creedence Clearwater Revival, the band, Neil Young, everybody knows This Is Nowhere. And the stuff that was on the radio,
What a cool time to have been alive.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I don't want to be one of these talking about the 60s, but but it was. There's no getting around it. It was a great time for music. Really good time for music. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other question I ask, and in many ways I feel like you answer, I try to ask 2 or 3 questions that stay the same, was just a form of activism, or how you connect your music to activism, which I feel like by talking about your record in many ways you did.
Yeah.
So that's usually the other question I have, or is if there's a specific cause you like to talk about or something that's like extra special close to you. Or
well,
not.
I was talking about, when I was a teenager, I was very much an activist, and I still am, but, maybe in different ways. But yeah, I was very much anti-military industrial complex, Again, it was in my blood. I was born a rebel, I think, My dad's father, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather was identified himself as considered himself a socialist Democrat.
Wow.
And he was involved. He was a Methodist minister who was also involved in the Southern Tenant Farmers Union struggle, and he was a supporter of civil rights, equal rights, and he and my grandmother both.
So
he was a CO, a conscientious objector of World War I, which was unheard of. Eventually, he left the church, because of his beliefs, and they didn't support those, and then my father, when he was in college, he befriended George Haley, who was the brother of Alex Haley, who wrote Roots. And George Haley was the first Black student at the University of Arkansas. And you can imagine what that was like in the 50s. And so he and my dad got to be close friends. And I think they were roommates for a while. And my dad asked George Haley to be my godfather. So,
Wow.
So it's in my blood, and.
Well, and you transmute it and transform it through song, which, like I said, is not an easy task, and you do it so well. And that's because it's, and when I say activism, it is sort of like, it doesn't necessarily mean like what picket lines have you been on, or, what's your, like, it could mean some artists have shared that they smile at people every day, and that's like, right. Or, so part of who you are, like you said, your grandparent, like it's part of your makeup, your DNA.
Yeah. Well, that again, I'm so glad you're saying that, expressing this way, because, that's why I did this album. I mean, that's part of my, like you said, it's a form of activism.
Yeah.
And I feel blessed and fortunate because I have this way to express,
right,
my beliefs and my feelings, and what better way to do it than through your art?
Yeah. Exactly.
So
that's like so launch. That was like a LaunchLeft.
Right on. I still say at the end of all my concerts, peace and love, and don't give up the fight, and all this.
Yeah. I know. Speaking of which, I got to see, and I think it was on Halloween? I think I saw your show in LA at the Beacon, or not Beacon, what big old theater in LA.
Oh yeah, El Rey.
The El Rey. No, it was another big old theater downtown LA.
Oh, that one. Yeah, the Ace Hotel.
Yeah, it was one of those. It was one of those. But I remember so you played, I think it was almost a 3-hour set. Or 2
Yeah.
And you told your format was storytelling, right, in between songs, and I'm just going to be completely transparent with you. As a rule, most of my friends know this about me. Like, even if I love the artist, I might not stay their whole show, even if it's 45 minutes.
Oh yeah, I know. I've been there. Trust me.
If I feel like I get what they're doing, or I like what they're doing, but I have something else that, like, I'm distracted, I get like fidgety, so I can't always stay.
I know.
I always and I literally couldn't move for 3 hours at that show with you.
Wow. I know what you mean. So that's a huge compliment.
And it was I was so moved by the format of storytelling, and then into the song, so that then I could process what you just told me, which was usually some pretty heavy shit.
That was the Car Wheels thing, wasn't it?
I think it was.
The Car Wheels anniversary show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was so powerful. It was so cool to get to have it was like your music, the songs became this like way to process the stories.
Yeah.
After you would tell the story, and I don't know, it made me digest them even more deeply, right? And so I was just surprised, to be honest, because like I said, it's not my habit to be that rigid. And that was a special thing, and it actually helped me a lot because at the time I'd been also doing shows about a record in honor of my brother River that I called River, who passed away in 1993. And so I had been kind of talking about loss during my show. And so seeing that show and realizing how powerful it can be to share stories along with song, it inspired me. So I really grateful to you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Special.
That's a huge compliment because I'm right there with you. I've been to see incredible genius artists, and I'm like, okay, I need a drink or something. That's when,
It's not meant to be offensive. It's just I just wanted to be transparent.
No, it's hard to sit still. Yeah. I think that's very common. I think those same artists would probably be like, have the same it'd be the same challenge for them. I don't think we were all meant to be in the audience, necessarily.
Yeah, but we've also probably all experienced those shows that are just like, whoa.
Yeah, well, like when I first went to see Bob Dylan.
Oh my God.
I was like that. I think that was one of the few times where I was just like on the edge of my seat with my jaw dropped,
Yeah. It sounds like he was a hero of yours. Did you say that Bob Dylan was one of your
definitely
heroes? Very cool. It's a good hero to have.
I mean, it was different back then. He was breaking new ground, and
right.
So
yeah, he's kept it going too.
Yeah.
I even like, I don't know, I like some of his later stuff a lot too. Well, I don't want to keep you all day. I don't know if you feel done, you're done, but I've just been, thank you so much for sharing, about music and activism and your record and just who you are as a person. Honestly, whatever people are saying, I've always experienced you as a source of inspiration and like a breath of fresh air always, because you don't bullshit. And so, and at the same time, like, how you talk about what you say makes me think more deeply about the subjects that, so, and even if I don't always agree, it makes me think more deeply. So I just appreciate you for that and being someone who is courageous enough to say how you feel and not be afraid of.
Thank you.
So, and do it so beautifully and so seamlessly.
Thank you.
It's really awesome. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. And is there anything else you want to share with our audience or anything else you feel like sharing? No.
Just everybody, just stay safe out there, and know that, we're all here, everybody's out there, and you're not alone.
Yeah.
And if there was ever a better reason for the internet,
right?
This is the time to utilize that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and don't let the bastards get you down.
Woo! Thank you, beautiful Miss Williams.
Thank you, Brian.
It's really nice to speak to you, Lucinda.
You too. I'm looking forward to when we can see each other.
Me too.
And give each other a hug.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday and week.
Thank you.
All right. Mwah, mwah. Okay. Hello, we're talking with the band Capes, Liberty, and Colin. They just put out a single May 10th, and we wanted to talk to them a little bit about that. They put it out on LaunchLeft. They are the first launched artist on the singles rollout leading up to the Alakazattic release on August 23rd. Welcome, Liberty and Colin. How are you guys today?
Thank you. Great.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Tell us a little bit about the track and the band Capes.
So we had a band previously together and set out to have a more conscious decision around building a band, where we wanted to have a strong ethos to how we create and what exactly it was that we wanted to create. And what came of it was that we didn't really want to just be a band, that we wanted to be more of a movement to kind of catalyze collaboration and creativity in a way that could go beyond just music. So it could be art, it could be writing, it could be movies, it could be marches, it could be pretty much anything, all with the understanding that we are working for the greater good. So we decided why we wanted to do it was to empower people to be their authentic and innate selves that's in each and every one of us. That was kind of the basis.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think the main idea, or at least the main impetus for us, is just that, you know, we're living in a time that a lot of us feel pretty helpless, and we're also sort of watching the people who have been leading the world start to give in to, you know, greed and to give in to what we consider to be, you know, evil, you know. And we kind of remember when we were kids and we dreamed about what we wanted to do and what we were going to be, and like that's my Superman cape from when I was a kid, and like I really believed that I was going to grow up to have superhuman powers, and that I was going to have to like save the world and do all these things. And as you get older, people start giving in to these like, well, that will never happen, this will never happen, oh, you got to give up on these things. And people kind of take it on as being mature, you know, like, oh, well, you can't save the world, you can't expect politicians not to be corrupt, you can't expect corporations to do the right thing. And a lot of times people like us who advocate for doing good, we kind of get put down as being naive or being childish, when really that's, you know, that's probably the strongest force we have for good, is like that child in us, that person in us who wanted to be a superhero, who really thought we could do these things. And so that's why Lib and I decided that we wanted to be known as capes. We're putting our capes on, we're putting them back on, so that we can start doing the things that should have been done already. But and obviously there are plenty of people who are working for that. It's not like nobody's doing it, but we want to join in.
Amazing, you guys. That sounds like an incredible movement. Nice to meet you, Colin. Never met you before.
You too.
You were in my dream the other night, and you were being extremely humble after being asked to play some piano, and you're like, oh, I didn't really write it. It wasn't really my idea, but like, yeah. And you were like killing it. And Liberty, this sounds, I've known you for some time, and sounds like it's right up your alley.
Yeah, the fun part about it, for sure, beyond all the great stuff, is that we have the opportunity to curate really cool events and spaces and places for people to find their own strength and be vulnerable in it. One of the things that we figured out in our own exploration of it was that when you get up and perform, it's one of the most vulnerable things that you can do. And you really put your heart out there and you bare your soul to the people who are watching it, whether nowadays it's only online or not. It's still a space that can create growth and change in the individual who's doing it, but then also to affect the audience as well. And to be able to curate something like that gives so much more meaning to performing than just, playing your song and opening up to collaborate with other artists, in every aspect, whether it's visual artists or musical or film and whatnot. So that part of it definitely sends home my need to have my hands in 100 pots at a time.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know what I realized is we didn't even say the name of the song yet.
This song is titled "Looking Out for Me."
Okay, and you want to tell us a little bit about the song, or you don't have to, because some artists prefer not to share, or disclose what it's even about songs. It's up to you. But if you don't want to do that, maybe talk about where you recorded it or,
Yeah, I'd love for people to interpret it the way that they want. I would talk about the collaborative efforts that we took on it, which was pretty cool, because the way that we've worked together musically is one of us presents the song to the table, and then we work on it together and make it the best rendition of itself, whether it's that we cut out a verse completely because it's just not fitting, or whether or not we need to really include additional instrumentation if that's needed or not. And the process with this song, it's probably almost 2 years old at this point, so it's one of our songs from the past, and it went through different renditions of being on guitar to being on electric keyboard to being with piano, and then going into the recording studio. We recorded at Pulp Arts in Gainesville, Florida. And it's just an incredible facility. And the mastermind engineer there, Michael Tubbs, definitely took it to a whole other level. And Colin did all the instruments and layered them. If you want to talk more about that part, I don't know exactly what all went into it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you covered it. And we tried to keep it simple. Lib has a very distinct quality to her voice in the way that she conveys emotion. It's one of the things that drew me to Lib in the first place. When she kind of she knows the story of the song, and when she's singing it, you can, everybody of course puts it through their own filter, but she's projecting that tone and emotion from it. And especially with Looking Out for Me, we didn't want to complicate it too much, so we kept it pretty simple. We used a beautiful Steinway grand piano that Michael has in his studio, which was like going to a theme park for me. And then we've experimented with putting some like very low keyboard. Like I used my synthesizer to put some low end in there just to kind of create this ominous buzz. And we've also brought in a friend of ours, Nolan, who played cello, and he added a couple of things here and there that is just gorgeous. And we're very grateful to him for lending his talents to us.
Well, we love the song, and we're so grateful to you and for being on the LaunchLeft imprint and being the flagship release for this singles rollout. Just want to thank you for coming on and sharing with our audience a little bit about your music and who you are as a movement, as you say. And so, Capes, welcome to the family. You'll be hearing their and watching their video right after this.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Love you guys. Love you, Seth.
If I knew you'd be gone, I would have written you a song. And if I knew you'd be gone, wouldn't have been so headstrong. But this whole time I've been told, yeah, this whole time I've been told you've been looking out for me. You've been looking out for me. strong. And if I knew you'd be gone, I wouldn't have let go of your arm. But this whole time I've been told, yeah, this whole time I've been told you've been looking out for me. You've been looking out for me. Why weren't you looking out for me? Why weren't you looking out for me?
LaunchLeft aims to create an intentional space that highlights and empowers all artists for whom radical creativity is not a choice, but a necessity. LaunchLeft begins with music, but its ultimate aim is to launch left-of-center artists in all creative fields.